Welcome back to ASMR Soldier. I hope that I can assist you tonight in falling asleep, going into a nice, deep, relaxing state so that you can wake up relaxed and well rested. Tonight I'm going to be reading you the 5 love languages. I'm not going to be able to read the entire book tonight, but I think we could start with one of the most important chapters to me because my love language is physical touch. I love being touched by my partner, holding hands, kissing, hugging, personal displays of affection. So that's the chapter we're going to be going over today, and this is the book right here. 5 love languages. This is a soft cover. But should still provide some triggers. So let's just go ahead and jump into chapter 5, which is physical touch. And as my bookmark, I have the Veterans Crisis Hotline number. If you're a veteran, or even if you just want to talk to them if you're going through something, please reach out to somebody. Okay, it's a dark situation, which I've been in before, and I've used this number, I've called this number many times. Not many times, but more than I wish to admit. And they are an amazing organization, so if you're going through a hard time and you're having some scary thoughts, or if you know someone that's having those thoughts, go ahead and give them a call. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead. Love language number 5. Physical touch. Here it is. That's my love language. Let me know in the comments what's yours if you've read the book. If not, just sit back and fall asleep. When we were babies, before we could even crawl or eat solid food, we thrived on love. Numerous research projects in the area of child development have come to the same conclusion. Babies who are held, hugged, and touched tenderly developed a healthier emotional life than those who are left for the long period times without physical contact. The same is true of the elderly. Visit some nursing home and you will find that the residents who receive affirmation touch have a much more positive spirit and generally do better than those who are not touched. Tender affirmation, physical touch, is a fundamental language of love. What is true for infants and the elderly is also true for single adults of all ages. One single young lady said, "It's funny that no one hesitates to touch a baby or pet a strange dog, but here I sit, sometimes dying to have someone to touch me, and no one does." She was then apologetic for letting her needs to be known, she concluded. I guess that's what we don't trust, letting people know the fact that we all like to be touched because we're afraid that people will misinterpret. So we sit back in loneliness and physical isolation. It has been my observation that thousands of single adults can identify with this young lady's honest sentiment. The body is made for touching, where the 5 senses touching, unlike the other 4, is not limited to one localized area of the body. Tiny tactile receptors are located throughout the body. When those receptors are touched or pressed, Nerves carry impulse to the brain. The brain interprets these impulses, and we perceive that the thing that touched us is warm or cold, hard or soft. It causes pain or pleasure. We may also interpret it as either a loving or hostile touch. Some parts of the body are more sensitive than others. The tips of our fingers and the tips of our nose are highly sensitive. So in the tip of the tongue, in contrast, the back of the shoulders is the least sensitive area. The difference is due to the fact that tiny tactile receptors are not scattered evenly over the body, but are arranged in clusters. Our purpose, however, is not to understand the neurological basis of the sense of touch, but rather its psychological importance. Physical touch can make or break relationships. It can communicate hate or love. If the person's primary love language is physical touch, your touches will speak much louder than the words. I love you or I hate you. Withhold touches and you will isolate and raise doubt about your love. A tender hug communicates love to any child, but it shouts love to the child whose primarily love language is physical touch. The same is true of single adults. When you listen to a friend who is feeling down and answers with a clasp of the shoulder, you declare loudly, I love you, I care, and you are not alone. When your body is touched, you are touched much more deeply than the mere physical contact. When someone withdraws from your body, they distance themselves from you emotionally. In our society, shaking hands is a way of communicating openness and social closeness to another individual. On a rare occasion, a man refuses to shake hands with another, it communicates a message that things are not right in their relationship. All touches are not created equal. A touch of love may take many forms. Since touch receptors are located throughout the body, lovingly touching another individual almost always can be an expression of love. But keep in mind that all touches are not created equal. Learn from the person whom you are touching what he or she perceives as a loving touch. Appropriate and inappropriate. There are appropriate and inappropriate ways to touch members of the opposite sex in every society. The recent attention to sexual harassment in Western culture has highlighted the danger of touching a member of the opposite sex in a way that is considered as sexually inappropriate. The type of touch will not only fail to communicate love, it may result in much more serious problems as well. Of course, physical abuse, inflicting bodily harm on another, is also inappropriate. Among single adults, the overall rate for severe violence is nearly 5 times as high for cohabitating couples when compared with married couples. We will discuss the nature of alt-right responses to physical abuse later in this chapter. Implicit and explicit. Love touch may be implicit and subtle, requiring only a moment. Jen sometimes puts a hand on her mother's shoulder as she pours a cup of tea. Sometimes she pats her mom on the back as she turns to walk away. In contrast, explicit touches such as a back rub or foot rub demand your full attention. Such touch obviously takes more time, not only in actual touching, but in developing your understanding of how to communicate love to another person. If a back massage communicates love loudly to someone you care about, then the time, money, and energy you spend in learning to be a good masseur and masseuses will be well invested. Implicit love touches require the little time but much thought, especially if physical touch is not your primary love language, and if you did not grow up in a touching family. As an adult, you can convey love to a partner or sibling simply yet powerfully. Sitting close to mom or dad on the couch as you watch your favorite TV show together may communicate your love loudly. Touching a family member as you walk through the room when he or she is sitting takes only a moment. Sensitive touches. Almost instinctively, in a time of crisis, we hug one another. Why? Because physical touch is a powerful communicator of love. In a time of crisis, more than anything, we need to feel loved. We can't always change events, but we can survive if we feel loved. Single adults are not exempt from the normal crisis of life. The death of a parent is inevitable. Automobile accident cripples and kills thousands each year. Disease is no respecter of persons. Disappointment are a part of life. The most important thing you can do for a friend in a time of crisis is to love him or her. If her primary love language is physical touch, nothing is more important than holding her as she cries. Your words may mean little, but your physical touch will communicate that you care. Cries provide a unique opportunity for expressing love. Your tender touches will be remembered long after the crisis has passed. Your failure to touch may also never be forgotten. How many successful single adults would give up their kingdom to have a genuine, tender hug from their dad? A pat on the back, a kiss on the cheek, a tender touch to the arm, holding hands and embracing all of the dialects of love language, physical touch. Julia revealed her own primary love language when she said, "One of the things I like most about my church is that people are huggers. When I leave church, my love tank is full. I can make it through a difficult week knowing that the people at my church love me." On the other hand, some single adults may not respond positively to physical touch. If, when you give a work associate a pat on the back, he stiffens up and withdraws, he is communicating that physical touch is not his primary love language. However, another person in the same office might feel affirmed by your pat on the back. The purpose of love is to enhance the well-being of another, to satisfy your own desires. Not to satisfy your own desires. Therefore, learning to speak another person's primary love language is the most effective way of loving others. Physical touch and sexuality. We cannot discuss physical touch as an emotional love language without also discussing how this affects human sexuality. Nor can we discuss physical touch without recognizing how 21st century sexual mores influence our way of touching. Today's single adults live in a cultural aftermath of the sexual revolution that began half a century ago. The outcome of the revolution. But how well has it worked? Glenn Stanton, a social research analyst and author of The Ring Makes All the Difference, says, "With a great divorce rate between marriage and sexuality, the dream of fulfilling sex life is more elusive and more people than it has been in many times in our nation's history." His conclusion is that sex does not need to be liberated. Rather, it simply needs to be confined to its proper and most productive domain. Decades of research show that this place is a lifelong monogamous marriage. Recent studies have shown that nearly half of women aged 15 to 44 have cohabitated as their first union. This commonly held idea that cohabitating will lead to a healthier marriage has been shattered by numerous research projects. These studies, conducted in several Western countries, including Canada, Sweden, New Zealand, and the United States, have found that those who cohabitate before marriage have substantially higher divorce rates than those who do not. In fact, the rates range from 50 to 100% higher. I did not know that. That is kind of shocking. Professor Jan Steets of Washington State University, one of the most noted researchers on the issue of cohabitation, concluded, cohabitating couples compared to married couples have less healthy relationships. They have lowered relationship quality lower stability, and higher levels of disagreement. The quest for meaning in sex. The popular idea is that sex is biological need to the same level as thirst. If you are thirsty, drink water. If you are hungry, eat food. If you have a sexual desire, fulfill it. But the fact is, none of us really believe that. We may drink water and eat food at any restaurant in the country, but having sex whenever, wherever, and with whomever does not meet the deep longing of the human soul for an exclusive sexual relationship. A major national sex survey from the University of Chicago found that 95% of cohabitators and 99% of married couples expected their partner to be sexually faithful to them. Something deep within us say, sex is intimate and should be shared with someone to whom I have deep commitment. When our sexual relationship is not exclusive, we feel violated. The reality is that married men are far more likely to be faithful than their wives. Than are cohabitating men with their domestic partner. Research indicates that cohabitating male is 4 times more likely to be unfaithful than the married man, and a cohabitating woman is 8 times more likely to be unfaithful to her lover than a married woman. There is a reason why Christianity and most major world religions have a high regard for human sexuality, viewing it not as a biological drive on the level with thirst, but as a gift from God to be fully and freely expressed between man and woman who are committed to each other by the covenant of marriage. All the sociological and anthropological and psychological research in the past 50 years has validated this view of human sexuality. The single adult, his contemporary society, must make the choice between uninhibited sexual expression or reserving sexual intercourse for the one whom you are willing to make a lifelong commitment. This is no minor choice. It affects your physical and emotional health, as well as sexual satisfaction for years to come. Appropriate touches, same sex and opposite sex. Oh, I skipped the page. Here we go. Having made this important and necessary digression from our discussion of the love language of physical touch, let me return now to say that there are many appropriate loving, affirming dialects in which one can express the love language of physical touch to members of the opposite sex. They may occur in a dating relationship, a friendship, or amongst coworkers. The love language of physical touch may also be spoken to members of the same sex. Such expression are expressions of sincere love and appreciation for a friend, a roommate, or someone you interact with in a business or social context. The emphasis of this chapter and the love language has everything to do with expressing emotional love to others by means of affirming physical touch. Learning to touch. However, for some single adults, giving and receiving love via physical touch will not be easy. Their lives have been scared by physical or sexual abuse when they were children or teenagers. For these individuals, Christian counseling offers the most effective means of healing the members of past abuse. Without such inner healing, it will be very difficult for most people to form healthy, long-term relationships. Other singles have not been traumatized by physical or sexual abuse may simply grow up in a family that were not touching families. Thus, the whole idea of physical touch seems to them an invasion of personal space and an emotional uncomfortable. For these singles, it is simply a matter of learning to speak a new love language. I am not a touchy-feely person. Marty, a 24-year-old, never married single, said to me, "I'm just not a touchy-feely person. I don't under I don't necessarily enjoy people hugging me, and I certainly don't initiate hugs to others. I guess it was the way I was brought up. In my family, we loved each other, but we didn't do much touching. The problem is in dating a guy that I really like, but he's complaining because I don't seem to be interested in kissing or hugging. I don't mind kissing if I'm really passionate, but hugging every time I see him or holding hands in public just doesn't seem natural to me. I knew that Marty had a sharp learning curve to face, but I hoped that her desire to continue this relationship might stimulate her learn to speak the love language of physical touch. After I explained the five love languages and that each person has a primary love language, Marty exclaimed, "Well, my primary love language certainly is not physical touch." "What is your primary love language?" I inquired. "I think it's words of affirmation," she said. "I really feel good when John tells me how pretty I am, or makes a comment about something I'm wearing. Maybe that's why it bothers me so much when he complains that I don't initiate touching enough. So much when he complains that I don't initiate touching enough. Like hugging or kissing, it seems to me like he is putting too much emphasis on touching. It was as if that's all that mattered to him. But maybe physical touch is his primary love language." I could tell that Marty was going to be a fast learner, so I said, "If physical touch is John's primary love language, would you like to learn to speak it?" "Yes," she said, "but I'm not sure I could ever be touchy-feely." "You don't have to change who you are," I said, "but you can learn to speak any of the five love languages, and you can certainly learn to speak the love language of physical touch." "How do I do that?" "By trying. Languages are learned one word at a time, and in this case, one touch at a time. Why don't you begin by hugging your partner the next time you see them?" I suggested. "You mean just walk up and hug them?" she asked. "Yes. Do you think you can do that?" "I guess so," she said, "but I don't really know how they'll respond." Learn by doing. It's going great. I'm touching more, taking the initiative, and it's beginning to feel more comfortable for me. "John is a great guy, and I assume he is giving you words of affirmation," I said. "Oh, yes, and no more complaints," said Marty. "The good news about the five love languages is that all of them can be learned. Thus, you can deepen all of your relationships by learning and speaking a person's primary love language. Becoming fluent in your love language of physical touch also requires that you be sensitive to the desires of other people. The time, place, and manner in which you touch are all important. Timing is everything. Timing is largely determined by the mood and desire of the other person. A single mom said, "I can tell when my son wants to be touched by the way he closes the door when he enters the house. If he slams the door, it's a 'don't touch me' mood. If he takes time to quietly close the door, he is saying, 'I'm open to a touch, Mom.'" Another single mom said, "I can tell when my daughter doesn't want to be touched by the distance she stands from when she talks to me. If she stands at the other side of the room while talking, I know that she doesn't want to be touched. But if she opens up and stands close to me, I know she is open to a loving touch." Often people communicate their mood by their body language, how close they are to you, or whether their arms are folded, for example. Observing body language will tell you the appropriate time for touching others. It is almost always inappropriate to touch someone when he or she is angry. Anger is an emotion that pushes people away from each other. If you attempt to hug a person when he or she is angry, you will most likely be rebuffed. Here is where physical touch can come across as an effort to control. It strikes the person's need for independence, and he will pull away from your touch. Touches are usually appropriate after a person has accomplished something great. It is a means of celebrating victory. This is often observed on the athletic field, but it works just as well in the office or in a dating relationship. Conversely, times of failure are also times for expressing the love language of physical touch. When people are down on themselves because they have not lived up to their potential, physical touch can communicate genuine love and concern. Knowing when. Knowing the appropriate situation is also important. This is a matter of setting, not sexuality. The 10-year-old welcomed his mother's embrace for each Pee-wee football Pee-wee for each Pee-wee football game was over. He rushed wherever his mother was standing and waited for her positive words and affirming touch. But at 16, when the varsity game is over, he will not be looking for his mom. He hopes he will not be looking for him. Single moms and dads will look for appropriate settings to affirm their child and teenagers through their love language. The same is true in dating relationships. Hugging and kissing when the two of you are alone is very different from hugging and kissing in a crowded mall. What is appropriate in one place may not be appropriate in another. The key is to respect the desire of the person you are dating. To force physical touch in places where they are not comfortable is not an expression of love, but of selfishness. Which brings us to the manner in which physical touch is expressed. Knowing how. Here, we are talking about not only the kinds of touches we give, but the manner in which we give them. There are numerous ways in which to express affection by physical touch. Hugs, kisses, back rubs, pats, tender touches, massages, and even arm wrestling are all appropriate way to speak the love language of physical touch. However, the process is not as simple as it sounds. Not everyone likes the same kind of touches. Some people like a hand on their shoulder and others don't. Every individual is unique. If you want to be successful in relationships, you must learn not only the love language, but also the dialect in which the other person best receives love. However, the process is not as simple as it sounds. Not everyone likes the same kind of touches. Some people like a hand on their shoulder and others don't. Every individual is unique. If you want to be successful in a relationship, you must learn not only the love language, but also the dialect in which the other person best receives love. If the person you are dating does not enjoy shoulder rubs, it would be a mistake to force such touch upon him or her simply because you like shoulder rubs. You must not force our own love language on other person. Rather, we must learn to speak his or her love language. If the person you are dating says, "I don't like that," and responds to your efforts to physical touch him or her, then back off and find another method of physical touch. To insist on continuing is to communicate the opposite of love. It is saying that you are not sensitive to their needs. Don't make the mistake of believing that what you like is what everyone else around you likes too. The whole concept of love language is learning to speak the other's language, not just perfecting your own. What makes other person feel loved is the key question. If physical touch is her primary love language, then you must find the particular kinds of touch that communicate love to her. It'd be a lot easier to love, though. Though a whole lot more boring if everyone felt the same way. The process of loving is complicated by the other person's own preferences. Obviously, the emotional climate in which you give physical touch is extremely important. If you slap a person on the shoulder because you are frustrated with his behavior, he will not feel loved. However, the same touch in a different context may be a genuine expression of love. Inappropriate physical touch. I wish I didn't have to write the next few paragraphs. I wish the terms physical abuse and sexual abuse were not so common in our society. But the reality is that a significant number of singles do experience abuse in dating relationships, particularly in cohabitating relationships. We see that more dramatic examples in the media, but many people suffer silently, and sometimes their closest friends and families are not even aware of the abuse. Physical abuse. In the five love languages of teenagers, I define physical abuse this way. Physical abuse is causing physical harm by beating, hitting, kicking, and so forth out of anger rather than play. The key word is anger. Some have never learned to handle anger in a constructive manner. When they are angered by someone's behavior, the flow of vicious words is followed by physical violence. Slaps, pushes, shoves, choking, holding, shaking, and hitting are all abusive behavior. Where this occurs, we can be certain that positive words and expression of physical affection, which follows such angry outbursts, will always appear hollow. The human heart does not easily recover from such physical abuse. A sincere and honest apology is not enough. The individual who is abusing must seek help in breaking these destructive patterns and learning positive anger management skills. Explosive anger will not simply go away with passing of time. If you are dating someone who is physically abusive, I would encourage you to break off the relationship and insist that the person get counseling for his or her behavior. If you are not emotionally strong enough to do this, then I would encourage you to go for personal counseling and gain the emotional strength and knowledge necessary so that you can take constructive steps to protect yourself from such abuse. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is taking advantage of a relationship to obtain sexual favors in order to satisfy one's own sexual desire. When one person is forced to perform sexual acts that they do not desire to perform, they are being sexually abused. Sexual abuse can also occur in other settings as well, not just in dating relationships. Sometimes it occurs in the context of drug abuse and other addictive behavior. Some single adults are so desperate for emotional love that they allow themselves to be treated as sexual objects rather than persons. Again, I would encourage such singles to seek individual counseling to gain the emotional energy and self-respect to stop abusive behavior. Any force of sexual behavior is the opposite of love. It is nothing more than self-gratification. Sexual abuse over a period of time breeds bitterness, hatred, and often depression. Sometimes such emotions erupt in violent behavior. The first step is to acknowledge this behavior as being wrong. The second step is to seek professional counseling, share the problem, and begin the process of healing. Yes, such a bold step will be costly, may bring embarrassment, may disrupt your dating relationship, and may create emotional stress for you, but failure to do so will be more costly in the long run. The love language of physical touch never uses force, but always seeks the appropriate time, place, and manner in which to express affirming touch. Physical touch is one of the fundamental languages of love. It is well worth the time, energy, and effort it takes to learn the language to speak it effectively. All right, so that was a really good chapter. I felt like it kind of ended a little dark, but it was very eye-opening, and reading that again was definitely worth the read. If you've made it this far, then I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that you've subscribed and liked this video. If you're asleep, then I guess I did my job effectively. I hope you're having a wonderful night, and I hope you wake up feeling even better. This is ASMR Soldier, and remember, I've got your six.